Hi everyone, there is Maggie from Awesome Toads, and in this video we will create a formula race game in Unity. So that is one simple mobile game for Android devices. So if you want to create one simple mobile game in Unity, definitely this tutorial is for you. So before every developing, I want to show you something. So if you go here in the file and then choose build settings, we see that we have there several platforms that we can develop our game in it. So first one platform and default one is this PC, Mac and Linux standalone. So this is one default platform, so whenever we create a new project, this platform comes by default. But if you want to create a mobile game, definitely you need to choose here Android or iOS, depends upon what you're using. So if I click here on the Android, then I need to click on the switch platform, and I created a platform for Android. And then if I release my game or app, this will be simple game or app for Android devices or mobile devices. And that was that short tip about Android devices and mobile games in general. So as I said, in this video we'll create a short game formula race called formula race. So the only purpose will be to avoid some formulas that falling down from some kind of sky. So I will go now here in our sprites, and you see that there are several sprites. We have a red formula, yellow formula, new road, which is our road, which is the background of our gameplay, and then this arrow, which is going to be simply two buttons for the left and right. And we are going to control our formula via these two buttons. Okay, now first of all we need to a little bit optimize this new road, because this is going to be a scrolling background. We will make effect of scrolling background in this game, and for that we need to go here in that background, which is our road, and then go here in the texture type, choose a default. Then we are going to uncheck this generate map, because this is only and mainly for the 3D objects and 3D platforms. And then we are going to the wrap mode, and simply instead of clamp we are going to pass repeat in order to our background be repeatable, in order to we can get the effect or creative effect of scrolling background in this game. So we do not want to compress also these other assets, because this is very fine currently. We are not going to create some special effects of these assets. We are going to simply drag and drop these assets in the scene. But before everything, we are going to import this new road in the scene, but not now. We need actually to create one canvas for that. So we are going to add this new road background on the quad actually. So you will see that later. So I will go here in the hierarchy and then go to the 3D object and choose simply quad. And now we create a simple quad game object. So now everything's fine. We are going to remove this mesh collider, because we don't need this collider on this game object. And as I said, this is going to be the taker of some kind of handler of our background. So we will pass here simply BG, which is a shortcut for the background, and we are good to go. So now we are going here in the assets, we are going to create a new folder here. So I will name this folder materials like this, and you can imagine we are going to put there materials for this game. So now I will go again here, go to the create, and searching here for the material. And this is going to be BG material. So I will simply rename this BG material, which is the background material. And then going here in the albedo, click this small circle and search for our new road, which is the image of our background. And now we created our BG material, which is actually our background. So when we go here in this quad game object, we are going to, as I said, this is also our background. This is going to be the handler of our background. We are going to resize this on the area of our camera. So you see where is the area of our camera. This is this green lines here. And we are going to simply resize this on the area of our camera. But you can also decrease this, for example here just in the sides. And I do not want to, I want our background be in front of all of our camera, of all of our area on the camera, and that is simply that. So now when I go here simply and attach this BG material, you will see that now we have our our background in the scene. So when we go in the game, we doesn't see anything because I think the problem here is that we don't have a directional light in the scene. So I will go here, simply go to the light and choose a directional light. And now when we go in the game, we again don't see anything. Why? Well, because our quad or our background is actually out of our canvas. So in order to fix this, we need to go again here in the hierarchy, go to the UI and create one simple canvas. And now we are going to create that this canvas needs to be on the area of our camera. So we are going here in the render mode, and then instead of the overlay, we are going to pass screen space camera. We are going to attach our one and only main camera, and then go here in the canvas scaler and scale with the screen size, and we see that there is reference resolution for our game. So if we go here in the game, we see that our resolution here by default is simply HD resolution. So we are going to pass here for the X 1280 by 720, and this is our resolution for our game. Here for the match, we are going to pass 0.5 on the equal of the width and the height, and we are good to go with our canvas. Now we are going to attach this, or simply drag and drop this background to our canvas to be the child of our canvas. And if your background is still invisible in the scene, then actually you need to go here in the position, and instead of any value you need to pass here a 0 on the z-axis, because the z-axis in the 2D platforms and in the 2D games is forward and behind. And if you put, for example, there a much greater value or much less value, for example minus 5000, this game object, our background will be minus 500 minus 5000 behind our scene, and for that we are not able to see this in the scene. But now when we put there a 0 on the z-axis, now our background or any particular game object is well positioned, and then when we go in the game, of course we will see that game object in the scene, because now this game object is well positioned. Okay, that is that. So of course we saw some gaps here. If when I go in the game, we see that there is also a blue area, blue color, and that is the area of course of our free space in the camera. So definitely we need to resize this. So I will simply resize this background, and we are good to go in the width and the height. And that was that. We are not going to see these gaps, I hope, anymore. So when I go in the game, yeah, we'll see this. And this is, guys, very cool. So also one thing that we need to do here is going to rotate this background. So when I go here in the rotation for the X, Y, and Z, we are going to rotate this background just on the Z axis. So when I go here, we are going to pass here, for example, 90, and then when we go in the game, we'll see this, and this is very cool. But you can, like me previously, again resize this in order to you cannot see this empty space here in the scene. And if you do not want to, you can, for example, change here the skybox of the main camera. So you can simply go here in the main camera and change the skybox in every color you want. So I will change here, for example, on some kind of shiny gray color for our skybox, and this is actually the background of our world space or free space of the main camera. Okay, going back to the scene, now we set up our background, and I think you also set up your background in fine order like me here. And now it is time to also drag and drop other game objects in this scene. So I will now drag and drop this red formula, because this is going to be our player. So I will drag and drop right here this image, and as I said, this is going to be our formula. First thing that we need to do here is flipping our formula. So because we are going forward, we are going from down to up, our formula actually needs to face that direction. So we'll go here just in the flip and choose here flip on the Y. So check here, and now when we go in the game, we see that our formula is flipped and everything is very cool. Now we are going to add some enemies here. So I will add 3 enemies, or actually 3 yellow formulas here, and we are good to go. So I will add these 3, and I think this formula of course needs to be a little bit bigger than this by default. So when we go here, we'll pass one formula, for example, here, and then second formula will be in the middle here, and then third one formula will be of course, for example, right here on the left side of our road. So of course we need to a little bit resize this game object, but this is nothing important. This resizing, you can add there a value that you want to add, and that is very fine. So going back to our player, so I will simply rename this to be our player because it's going to be our main formula that we are going to control this formula via buttons that I also imported here, and we are good to go. So now of course we are going to increase our formula in dimensions, like we increase also our yellow enemy formulas, and we are good to go. So now we are going here in the add component, and then we are going to attach a couple of components. So the first one is box collider. So when I go here, I will edit this collider a little bit. So I'll pass here, for example, like this first one collider, and then this is going to be a very fine collider. So this is the box collider of our formula. You can edit this collider here by clicking here on this button and add the shape of the collider that you want. Okay, then moving forward, we are going to also attach a rigid body 2D, which is responsible for the physics in our game. So actually we'll make later to this formula can detect the collision with these enemy formulas. And in order to do that, one game object between these two game objects needs to have this rigid body 2D. So if, for example, add a rigid body 2D to the enemy formula, then our player doesn't need to have also a rigid body. So if we want, for example, to create a collision between two game objects, just the one game object between that two needs to have this rigid body. So actually must have one rigid body on one of that two game objects. Okay, then moving forward now, we are now going to attach one script to our game object that we do not yet create. So we are going here in the scripts, and then going here to the create and choose a C# script, which is going to be named simply player movement. So player movement, and of course I made a mistake here, so there is a player, and then we are going to attach this script, of course, on our player, because it's going to be a script that's going to be responsible for the movement of our player left and right, that we are going to control that two directions via buttons. Okay, now we will open simply this script in our Visual Studio, and we are good to move on. So every coding we started with creating a variable. So we are going here and we are going to pass first variable that is going to be public rigid body 2D. So I'll pass here rigid body 2D, and then we are going to name this variable simply RB. Second variable will also be public, so this one will be public float, and then this is going to be move speed, and this is going to be responsible for the speed of our movement of our player, of course. And then we are going to delete this start method because we don't need this method, except we are going to add here some methods on our own. So I will create here first one will be actually public void, so not just a public, then public void. So public void left, so this is going to be left direction of our player, and then we are going to use our RB, which is our rigid body. Then we are going to add force on our player to the specific direction, and that direction we are going to provide by vector2.left. So vector2.left is actually the left side in our world space. And then when we pass here a comma, or not comma, excuse me, we are going to pass here a multiplier, because we are going to multiply this direction with our move speed that we have just created above in the variables. And then this move speed we are going again to increase by time.delta time, and we are good to go. So I will take this function and copy and paste this function, because our right function will be actually very similar to this left, so except there will be actually, instead of left, there will be vector2.right, which is the right side in our world space, in our scene. And then everything is the same. We are going to multiply this with our move speed with our time.delta time, which simply makes our variable values smoother in fine order. We are going to move smooth in the gameplay, and that time.delta time provides to us. Okay, we created these two left and right methods. That's going to be for our buttons, and last one actually method will be for our collisions. So when I go here, I will pass here void on trigger. So on trigger enter 2D, and in this function I am going to simply pass here destroy, and then in the parentheses game object, and that is that. So this is one shortest method, and I will explain what we did here. So actually we pass here private void on trigger enter 2D, which is the function that is responsible for the collisions in the game, and this detects the collision between trigger and non-trigger game object. What does this mean? So if we go back to the Unity, if I, for example, choose our player, we see that our player have there a box collider, and we see that this box collider is not set to be trigger. And for that we need to set there a trigger in order to we can detect the collision between trigger and non-trigger game objects. And in this case, non-trigger game objects will be our enemies here. So when I go here, I will go and choose all of our enemies, yellow formulas, and then attach also a box collider to these formulas. And then there are not going to be trigger colliders in order to we can detect the collision between these enemy formulas and our player formula. So then we are going to, if that collision happens, we are going to destroy our game object, and our game object here, when we pass game object, this means that we are going to destroy the game object where this script is attached, and our script display movement is attached just on our player, and we are going to destroy our player because our player is there a game object. So that is whole philosophy. If we come to collision with our player and our enemy formulas, our player will die. So we actually needs to avoid our enemy formulas in order to we can survive in this game. Okay, we are going to pass here, we are going to click here save and save this script and go back to the Unity editor. And then first thing that we need to do is going here in our player and then attach this script that we have just coded in order to this script can work. And we see that we cannot directly attach this script from this game object. Instead we are going here in the add component and simply search for that script, and we are good to go. We attach that script on our player game object, everything is fine. Now we see that we have there some empty slots that we need to fill up. So first one is for our rigid body 2D that we have created. So I will simply take this rigid body, click on this, drag and drop this rigid body in this empty slot, and we attach this variable value, so this component actually. And then move speed, and I found that the move speed for our game here is somewhere about 5,500. So I think this is going to be the perfect variable value for this case, but you can experiment with this, change this variable value in order in the way that you want, that you find as a perfect for your game, for your case, and you're good to go. Okay, now we are going to a little bit rename these enemies. So I will simply pass their enemy formula, and I renamed this game object just in order to you cannot get confused with these names here, or game objects, components, so on and so forth. And as I said, the organization in the project is very important thing in the game development. So now we need to move on with this. Now we are going back to our sprites. So we are going back. So as I said, we are going to also drag and drop and import in the scene these two buttons. So I will add one and then other, and this is going to be the buttons for the left and the right. So we are going to control our player with just these two directions, so not forward, not behind, not back. And we are going to control our player just on the right and the left. So we are going to flip also this left one button on the x-axis. So when I go here and click and check this x-axis, we see that we flipped this button here, and now this is actually our left button. So we will of course, like our formulas, rename these buttons also. So this is going to be right BT, and which is a shortcut for our button, and this is going to be actually, so not right, I made a mistake, definitely this is going to be left BTN, and we are good to go. When we go in the game, we'll see this, and guys, I think, and I'm satisfied with this design so far. Okay, going back here, now we need to attach or concatenate this right button and left button with the methods that we have coded in these scripts. So going back to the Unity, and we are going to first of all take this left button, but before that we need to take these two buttons and attach or import that buttons to the canvas. So now when we go in the canvas and when we have these two images to the canvas, we can go here in the add component and add a button component. And now actually our our right button and left button images will have the characteristics of one buttons. We have there a couple of options: normal color, highlighted color, press color. So this is, for example, press color. When we press this button, this color will appear. Selected color, when we just select this button, so on and so forth. You have there several options, a bunch of options, and you can experiment with that. So I do not want to bore you with that. In this tutorial, I want to go here in the unclick event, go to the small plus sign, but first of all, let's select one particular button, which is the left button. Again, go here, click the plus, and then we need to attach there a player. Why the player here in this empty slot? Because our player actually holds the script where these methods are, and we want to add here on the left button this left method. And in order to do that, we need to attach there a player because he holds these scripts. And when we go now here in where it says no function, when we go here, so in the player movement, excuse me, and when we click the left, now we concatenate this left button with this left method from the Visual Studio that we have programmed. And we are going to do the exactly same thing for our right button. So I will again pass here, drag and drop our player in this empty slot, go in the where it says no function, go to the player movement script, and then click on this right method. And now we concatenate these two with the methods from our Visual Studio. Okay guys, now everything is very fine. Then we need to go here in the enemies, and then we are going actually to the scripts and then to create our enemy scripts for our enemies formula. So I will simply go here and pass enemy move. So I will call this script enemy move, and then I will also open up this enemy move script in the Visual Studio. And in this script we will have just one variable value and one line of code. So this is going to be the shortest script in this game, I think. So first one and last one variable will be actually a public float, and then speed of our enemies for enemy formulas. And this speed is going to be 200 by default, but if we, for example, pass here a public behind some variable value, this variable value will be visible in the inspector, and for that we can add a value directly to that inspector when we go back to the Unity editor. So now I will skip there giving the value, because if we mark our variable as a public, that variable of course will be visible in the inspector panel, and we can give the value there. Okay, moving on, we are going to again delete this start method because we don't need this method. And just in the update method we are going to pass here transform.translate. This is one function for moving our game objects. And then in the parentheses we are going to open this new vector2 or vector3, excuse me, so vector3, and then again in the parentheses for the x-axis we are going to pass there a 0, for the y-axis 1, and again for the z-axis also 0. And then we are going again to multiply this with the not moving speed, but for the just the speed that we have created, and then multiply that speed variable with our time.delta time, like in the case we multiply here in our player movement script. So the same thing again, we are simply adding here a force on the y-axis of our enemies. So we are adding that force on the y-axis every frame, because update is called 60 frames in a second. That is one repeatedly method. So of course, if you know how update works, you know that our enemies will go down with this speed that is multiplied with the time.delta time. So I will simply now save this, go back to the Unity, and then I will take all of our formulas here, our three formulas, cute formulas that we have import, and then attach this enemy move script, and everything is fine. Then there for the speed we are going to pass some value like 500, and I think this will be fine for our enemy move. So we can add a greater value, for example 1000, and you can experiment, as I said, with these variable values. Okay, that is for now unimportant. Now we need to do the last thing in this game, and that is the effect for our scrolling background. So now we are going here in the scripts, and we are going to create the last script in this video, and that is our scrolling background effect. So we are going to name this script simply scrolling bg, and then open it up in, of course, Visual Studio. We will have there a couple, of course, of variables. So first one is public float, and then speed of scrolling, and then second variable will be vector2. So I made a mistake, of course, vector2.offset. And then we are again going to destroy or delete this pure start method, and instead we are going to use simply this update method, and then we are going to use our offset variable that we have just created, and in that variable we are going to store new vector2, and then in the parentheses of the new vector2 we are going to add there a time, so time.time, and then we are going to multiply this with the speed variable that we have just created, and for the y-axis we are going to leave this on the 0. And second line of code will be getting component of our renderer. So we will pass here get component, and then we will open these angular brackets, and in it we are going to pass here renderer, simply renderer, and then we are going to again open these empty brackets dot material dot main texture offset. So main texture offset, it is going to be equal to our offset that we have created here. And what we did here, so actually we use here two variables, that is the offset and the speed of scrolling, and then we pass here in the, also we have there some arrow, the name get doesn't exist in current content. So what we did here, so I will go back and pass again get component, but this time with this angular brackets, and now our error is gone. So silly me sometimes. Then we use that offset and store that in the vector2, which is the on the x-axis, which is going to be multiply with the time.time and then to the speed. So time.time is nothing but the time in the real world, in the real space, in our Unity. So like the time in our world, like the time in the world of the Unity, this is going to be multiplied with the speed, which we are going to add the value in the inspector, because this variable is marked as a public. For the y-axis we do not want to touch that, this is leave as 0, and then we are going to get the component of our renderer.material.main-texture offset and store that back to our offset that we have programmed here. So this is actually the getting component of our background of our renderer.material, because our background is actually a material, have the origin of the material. If you remember, we created a material of our background and store that back to offset, which we are going to every frame multiply with this speed. Okay, I think this is understandable to you. Going back to the Unity editor, and of course the scrolling background we are going to attach on our background in the Unity editor. So I will go here in the add component and then searching for our scrolling BG script, and this is very cool, guys. For the speed of scrolling I will add, for example, 10 or 5. I think this will be the prettier value. And now, guys, comes the time that we definitely need to test all of this out. So I will go back and play our game and see all of this in action, as we have some gaps, as we have some errors. So I will simply click the play button and see all of this in action. And then the testing comes, and whoa, we have a lot of problems here. So guys, our player disappear. We doesn't see our enemy formulas and so on and so forth. We need to fix these problems. So I'll go here in the player, and I think, yeah, the problem here is that we leave this gravity scale as a 1. In order to fix this, we need to pass there a gravity scale in order to our player be static, just to stay in one place. In order to do that, we need to pass 0 on the gravity scale in order to the gravity cannot affect our player. And I don't know why we doesn't see these enemy formulas, but I think the problem is the very big variable value here. So I will load this up a little bit, for example 50, and now I think everything will be much prettier. So I will again play our game, and when we, for example, click the left button, we see that our left button and right button doesn't work. So if we go back, and the problem here is that we cannot create a button with this sprite renderer. Instead of that, we need to use actually an image instead of this sprite renderer. So I completely forgot that, so excuse me about this. So we will simply delete these two buttons shortly, and then we are going again to the canvas, go to the UI and create one simple button, and then we are good to go. So now in this first button, this is going to be the the left button, I will pass here UI sprite to be arrow new. So when we go and click the set native size, of course, so when we go here, so this is going to be of course a right button, so I will a little bit resize this button here in the dimensions. Definitely we need to delete this text from this button that comes by default, and this is going to be a right button. So I will pass here right button, and then we are going to copy and paste this, and this is, you can imagine, be a left button. And then for the left button, because we see that our left button actually points to the right side, we are going here in the rotation, and then for the z-axis we are going to pass there 180, and now our left button is also flipped like right button. Okay guys, now I think everything will be fine. So for the last thing, we need to attach there or concatenate there our methods from the player movement script. So I will add here a player. So this is the left button, and going here in the player, choose the left, going here in the right, attach our player. So I forgot to click the plus sign, silly me. So player, and then of course use or click on the right button, right function. And now we are going to one more time test out also these buttons. So now when I click the left, we see that our car go in the left side. When I click the right, our car go in the right side. And guys, this is the fact that we wanted to create. We can now control our car with these actually buttons for the mobile, and it's very cool. So last gap and last error that we had is our enemy formula. So we will go here in the first one, enemy formula, and we see that the speed is 15, and I think that also this speed is very fast for our enemy move script. So we'll go and decrease this. So we'll pass, for example, 15, and I think this will be the perfect variable value for this. And also definitely there we need to pass a 15, because their state is 1000, which is the crazy variable value for this enemy move script, and that is that. And also I think that we actually need to put there a -1 instead of 1. So actually the 1 is the positive direction in the world space. When we pass here a 1 without minus, this means our enemies will go up. When we pass the -1, our enemies will go down. And for that we actually forgot to pass there a minus to make that our enemies moves down instead of up. So that was the mistake. I will go back here again, save all of this script, go back here, and again test out this game. And now we see now that everything works. Our enemy goes down, forward to our player, and then this is very fine, guys. We tested everything that we have created in this game. I think you are satisfied with this game. You can a little bit slow down this enemy move script or this speed variable value. You can slow down a little bit and play this game and try to avoid these enemy formulas. So the main reason that I present to you this game is mobile games. So you can create this, for example, simple mobile games using these some kind of buttons here, touch controls, going here in the build settings in the file, and then build settings, and choose an Android, connect your phone even with your game, and so on and so forth. You have plenty of options in that road. So guys, that was that. I will now save this game, and I will see you in some next video.